watch is better than that thing's doing right now. So.
We've already got it corrected on their tablet, so big a deal.
I mean, I will.
All of me brought, so that'll have to do.
I won't sneeze on you. Or cough on you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Excited. She'll be two.
Watersound Origins. And they postponed their other deal, or they're gonna ask to push it to the next meeting. That thing's still on it.
Karen, you ready? If y'all would please stand, we'll get started with saying the pledge and having an invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bow your heads. Lord, we just thank you so much for the opportunities you give us in this great nation and in this county. We just ask, Lord, that you guide us and direct us in these decisions.
Amen. Before we get started, just a real quick remind everybody, if you haven't already, please either turn your cell phones off or put them on silent. I don't think we have to worry about it tonight, but if we do get there, we will have a 9 o'clock time certain end of the meeting. Anything that's not complete will be continued to the next meeting. We'll go ahead and open the meeting, and the first item is approval of the minutes.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion.
Second.
Second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Mr. Carpenter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Commissioners. Matt Carpenter for the Planning Department, CARPENTER. We have 5 projects on our agenda tonight. We're going to request to continue 2 of those. Would you like to take those now?
Yes, please.
Item number 4 on your agenda, the Walton County Detailed Special Area Plan, number 1, which is a component of the Bay Walton Sector Plan. We have a request to continue that item to January 9, 2020 at 4 p.m. in this location.
We have a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Babcock, Mr. Perry. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, item number 6, the New Life Church of God. We're asking to continue this major development to January 9th, 2020 at 4 p.m. in this location also.
Commissioners?
So moved.
Motion?
Second.
No second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
If you're ready, we'll move right into our legislative items.
Yes, sir.
The first item is agenda item number 2. This is Path of Grace, large-scale amendment. It's a request to approve by ordinance. It's been reviewed by Bob Baronti, and I'll ask Bob to briefly introduce it for us.
Good evening. The first item, as Max said, it's a Paths of Grace. This is large-scale amendment application submitted by Jenkins Engineering on behalf of Paths of Grace, Inc., requesting approval to change the future land use from conservation residential to public facilities and institutional with a zoning of conservation residential 2:1 to institutional on 10.09 plus or minus acres. The project is located on the west side of Church Street, approximately 1 mile north of the intersection of U.S. Highway 98 and Church Street, and the parcel number is identified in your staff report. as I said, I reviewed what the current and future request is. It meets with comprehensive planning guidelines. There is one staff report or staff comment that has already been addressed, but it hasn't been a final approval. So there's no issue with getting it moving forward. Mr. Jenkins is here to answer any questions. If you don't have any questions for me, I'd like to ask you to enter the staff report in the record.
Accepted.
And is there any questions for me before I sit on?
Any questions of staff?
Thank you.
Safe for now.
Good evening, I'm Scott Jenkins with Jenkins Engineering, Jenkins. As Bob said, he did a pretty good job of explaining. This is the property, it's approximately 10 acres. Church Street, Churchill Body Road here. Looking to purchase this and do a facility similar to the one they have on Hewitt Road, not too far from here. If you look at the area in general, here, pretty good concentration of institutional uses in the area. There. The property actually has very little wetlands. The survey shows that the elevations on the property will be able to remove it from the floodplain, it looks like. So very few environmental constraints, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
Those like me that may not know what Path of Grace does, where they're at now, can you just briefly tell us what they're actually going to do there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Path of Grace is a church-based nonprofit, kind of a women's center where they offer help for women that are in need and things like that. So it'll be kind of a group home.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Jenkins? Let's say stand by.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. We're going to open up public comments. We have a few people who have signed up. Mr. Jim Crawford? Yes, sir. Would you like to speak? Okay. Joe Burgoyne?
Joe Burgoyne, 99 Churchill Drive. I have not seen the layout of what it's going to be or how many, I don't know if there's homes or I don't know what they're going to be building there. And I don't know about the access road that they have. I've seen the area they've cleared, but I just want clarification on the private road that butts up to it.
Okay, are you concerned with something there or?
Well, how many residences are getting built? I was just curious.
Right.
Okay.
Allow them to make applications.
Yeah. Once they actually get a project and go through the development process, they'll have to give us that site plan and everything once they get there. This is just to allow them to begin that process.
And then there'd be another meeting to approve or
Yes,
disapprove?
that's correct.
Okay. All right, well, road access was my question. That's it, thanks.
I can probably answer it. I mean, correct, we don't have plans yet. We don't have an application, but I mean, they will access actually off Church Street. This area, probably close to
Thank you.
Okay. Jim Davis? No comment? Does anybody else have any comments? Anything on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comments. Commissioners? Any questions, comments, concerns?
I don't have a problem with it, but
So with the industrial zoning change, if they decided to change what they were going to put there, what would it allow them to put in?
It's actually institutional.
Institutional?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So it has to be what goes there? What can go there?
Church, school, civic use.
Anything else? Someone will make a motion?
To approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and take your pick on seconds. Got a bunch of them. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item on our agenda is agenda item number 3. This is the Hocker Rezoning request. It's a request to approve by ordinance. It's also been reviewed by Bob Baronti, and I'll ask him to introduce it for us.
Sorry, I lost my blue page walking up here.
You're from Pennsylvania, we'll excuse you.
I apologize. The next item is the Hocker Rezoning, SSA. The requested change is to go from a future land use of residential and a zoning of residential preservation and neighborhood infill to a future land use of residential and the zoning of low-density residential and reservation, 4-1. It meets the comprehensive plan. There is no outstanding comments. There was one environmental comment that was addressed by the applicant. The applicant is here to speak, and this is, the applicant is here to speak. Then can I enter the staff report in the record? And is there anybody has any questions?
Any questions for staff?
Thank you. So, you have a packet of, I believe, there are 4 letters in front of you.
Good evening, members of the board. Dean Burgess with Emerald Coast Associates. We represent the owner of the property. They are seeking to change this from residential preservation to low-density residential, 4-1. The property measures 0.62 acres, so maximum density would be 2 units on the property. And that's their intent, was just to build two units. Once they have the land use change, they'd probably just do a lot split and seek the two lots for single family home, which once again, the low density residential limits it to single family uses. If there's any questions of the board, I'd be happy to respond.
Is the intent for these to be, I'm sure it is, rental properties, short-term rental?
They may be rental properties, yes, sir.
Do you know the size of these houses?
I don't know what size would be built on the property. Currently, the lot is considerably larger than other lots, and I think splitting these would actually put it in keeping with the development that's around it, and still be a little bit larger than some of the lots around it.
If you didn't split it based on the zoning now, what could you put there?
You could put a very large house,
Just one?
just one extremely large house.
So
And that's why I think it's
no
kind of
clustering.
out of place as far as the size of the lot currently. It's considerably larger than any of the lots, and I think it would lend itself to a monster house, yeah, potentially.
It looks like most of
Yeah, if you imagine this lot cut in half, it pretty much fits the neighborhood immediately adjacent to it, and it's still a little bit larger than some of the lots to the east and to the north.
Look, yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there that's got a lot more density. I'm wondering, and staff would probably know this, is a lot of this stuff around it had land use changes to get their densities higher? Because this one doesn't have real high density for the size.
Commissioner, it appears that most of this was developed prior to the current comp plan land development code. We've got some low-rise, we've got some high-rise stuff, and we've got some multifamily condominiums that have some fairly significant density that wouldn't be available under the county's present comprehensive plan.
Lastly, I'd just like to add that in the residential preservation, the current land use category that it's designated, residential preservation is reserved for subdivisions existing as of November 7th, 1996, which this is not. It's not the end product of a subdivision. Approved development order projects which are vested or built out, which this isn't. It's a lot of record. Has not had a development order on it. Or recorded platted subdivisions that have infrastructure in place and are substantially built out, which this isn't either. So it doesn't fit the category that it's in. It really needs to be rezoned to comply with one of the zoning categories available.
Anybody else have any questions for the applicant?
Thank you.
We have one person who has signed up to speak, Ed Woolley.
I'm Ed Woolley, and I live just on the same, this project is in my front yard, actually. I live in Emerald Haven.
Okay.
And one of the things we were concerned about is, of course, like the gentleman said, the size of the projects that can go there. We've already been inundated with a bunch of 7-bedroom houses that are single-family residences that are rented to 28 people at a time. And I understand that people want to get their rental and this kind of thing, but we also want to live our life. This is, in our opinion, our final home. And I saw something recently, it's been a few months, about the number of people that can be in a short-term rental. And I was under the impression from what I read that it was 21 people, or else it's considered a hotel. And I don't remember where I saw that, but that was something that I saw. So this is one of our concerns is the increased traffic. It's a small 2-lane street that we live on, Payne Street, and one end of Payne Street has a one-way drive coming into it, and so you just have an enormous amount of traffic when you get an extra 200, and this would add several, 50 more people, say 250 people in the area every week in the summer.
Well, I share your concern about the monster houses, and my thought on this particular, in my opinion, is if you leave that lot the size it is, that might be what you end up with. I think by cutting that lot in half and building 2 smaller single-family homes, I think you could avoid the big monster house.
Right.
That's just my thought. I mean, I think
as far as monster house, is there any limit as to how many people they can rent to at one time?
I'll let Mr. Carpenter answer that.
In Walton County, we have no housing code that limits the number of occupants for a particular house. The city of Destin, I think, may have been where you read the information about the 21 and classification as transient lodging. We do not have that here in our county. The limitations on the size of the house would be based on their ability to manage their own stormwater and meet the setbacks, the standard county setbacks of 20-foot front, 7.5 on the sides, and a 15-foot rear. What I would imagine would be built there is 2 single-family homes with swimming pools. But I think the applicant does make a good point, as does the chairman, that if this is left as one continuous lot, someone will buy this and try to maximize the footprint in that lot. And I think from the public standpoint, it would be much better if this were two smaller lots rather than one large lot. And that would help us in our ability to manage the size of the house. We certainly understand your concerns, but at present, state law prevents us from regulating whether or not it can be a short-term rental. We don't have the opportunity to determine what the term of occupancy is.
And what we've done to try
Thanks to our state legislature that has preempted our ability to regulate that locally.
I think we've tried to do something with that by number of parking spaces required or permitted, right, Mac? So and that's really the only way the county has right now to try to limit the monster houses. But a lot that big, I think that's potentially could happen there. I think that by going with two smaller dwellings, you're probably much better off long-term than having, like you said, one of these single-family homes that they rent to 27 people.
Right.
Or more.
Or more.
Or more.
That's the most ridiculous thing in the world to me. But
Probably gonna help with the values in the area too. It has two smaller houses and one big one that's more like a hotel.
right.
Whatever does go in there, they'll still have to come back and go through the process of making sure everything meets code, and it'll be right back in front of this
Exactly.
board again before it goes on to the county commission.
I mean,
No, not this board.
they
It'll,
won't go.
Well,
to
okay,
those.
well, yeah.
Those are smaller. But I think everybody up here shares a concern on these condos that they call single-family residences, especially when you've got 2 or 3 parking places and 25 cars trying to park.
Exactly. Well, we have that situation behind us, and there are, like I say, 8 of these that
Yeah, I
several
think that's,
bedrooms.
I
and-
think this is a way probably to avoid that happening, is by putting in 2 smaller homes. I wish that we could do something about those monsters myself, so.
Right. Yes, we, like I say, that's the one thing. And then of course, the noise ordinance that we have in place has been fairly effective, and we're able to handle that. It's just, like I say, a matter of the additional people in the area at one time.
I can certainly appreciate that.
But I was pleased to see that it was 2 lots instead of 4.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
But that's all we have.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comments. Commissioners?
I think we discussed everything that we needed to on it, so make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other comment? All in favor say aye. Carries.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Commissioners. Moving forward on our agenda, we've already continued item number 4, so we're moving to item number 5. This is Watersound Origins Townhomes. It's a request approved by final order, and it's been reviewed by Renee Bradley, and I would ask her to come and briefly introduce the project.
I'm sorry. Anyone who anticipates testifying on this item, if you would stand at this time to be sworn in. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide to this board will be the truth? Thank you. Whenever you come forward, just state your name and state that you've been sworn in.
Renee Bradley for the Walton County Planning Department. This project is a major development order application submitted by Innerlight Engineering Corporation on behalf of Watersound Company LLC, requesting approval to construct 64 townhomes within the Watersound Origins on 9.7 acres with a future land use of Bay Walton Sector Village Center and zoning of Bay Walton Sector Planned Village Center. Project's located 0.4 miles north on Watersound Parkway, and that's approximately 11.5 miles from US Highway 98 and 331, and is identified by the parcel IDs in your packet. We don't have any outstanding technical comments on this project. We do have a condition from planning that the recreational fees get paid at the time of plating. They will be plating this townhome development, and I'll be glad to answer any questions for the board.
Commissioners?
Plating, in other words, each one will be an individual lot that can be sold separately?
No, sir. We'll actually do a complete townhome plat that will show the building footprints on the plat. It doesn't have individual lots.
Wanna
They
make
would
sure I
be,
understand that.
they could sell the building footprint, but they couldn't sell the individual lots.
Well,
Okay.
they can't sell the individual townhomes, is that what
They
you're saying?
could, but the footprint of the building underneath them, not necessarily a lot where they would have a yard to go with it, but the footprint of the building. Everything else would remain in common area.
I got you. Okay.
Like a condo, yeah.
Yes, sir, correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee, and good evening. I'm David Smith with Innerlight Engineering, and I'm representing the Watersound Company LLC, and I have been sworn in. And as Renee presented, Watersound Origins Townhomes is 64 proposed units within Watersound North, north of US Highway 98. And this is the site plan. So we're proposing one driveway connection to Watersound, North Watersound Parkway, coming in with the townhomes on either side to a road that loops back around on itself. And there's a stormwater management facility on the southern side of the property. So having said that, I will be more than happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Commissioners?
How many people are going to each house?
It's just a typical townhome unit, two-story. I mean, it's a,
3 bed, 2 bath?
I don't remember the exact bedroom count, but it's
3-bedroom.
3-bedroom.
That's what
Okay.
this
Yeah.
shows.
It's a typical townhome unit. It's not multiple families.
Anybody else? What's the traffic like coming in and out of there?
As far as congestion, it's, I mean, I drive it through it often. It's not heavily congested or backed up.
That's where the new red light got put in.
Yes, sir, and that helps greatly as far as helping traffic move.
Quite a bit, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, if nobody has any questions for you, you can,
Motion to approve.
we gotta take public comments first.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hold on to it.
Okay, we didn't have anybody sign up to speak. Is there anybody who would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comments. Commissioners?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. That completes our project review. I think you have 3 other items on your agenda to take care of.
Need to approve the meeting calendar for next year.
It's gonna basically the same as we've got this year and past.
Second Tuesday, second Thursday.
Second
yeah.
Thursday.
Motion to accept as the same schedule we've had then.
We have a motion.
Second.
Have a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Next item. I lost it.
Chair.
Election of a chair.
Recommend Teddy stay on as chair.
I'll do it. It's up to y'all.
Was that a motion?
That's a motion.
I second it.
Barbara, you don't want it?
No.
Motion and second. Anybody else have anything? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And elect the vice chair. Currently is Mr. Perry.
Are you willing to serve again, Lee?
Don't have to do a whole lot. Teddy's goes down.
I make a motion that Lee Perry be the vice chair next year.
We have a motion. We have a second. Motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. That completes our agenda. Angelique, you didn't have too hard a time tonight, did you? Well, Bobby, you missed a good one.
Mr. Chairman, we'll do our best to bring you a more controversial